Vern Tejas took a fall in Tibet that was over 600 feet.
No.
The only way I really got to climb was to run away from home.
Okay, wait. So how old were you when you did that, Vern?
Well, yeah, 14.
Oh my gosh.
What was... Action.
He's a mountain climbing record holder, motivational speaker, author, has a master's degree in psychotherapy.
He's a one-leg amputee and has been awarded as one of the 10 most outstanding young Americans.
Adversity inspires transformation. I created Love and Lemonz to help people embrace life's challenges, find strength in love, and turn obstacles into opportunities. So when life hands you lemons, make lemonade.
Episode 1. Okay, so you've probably have seen some pretty difficult situations in your life. You probably have been in a situation where you thought, there is no way I'm ever going to get out of this, and maybe not even get out of it alive. Well, the gentleman that we have today actually has lived a life of that. And I think the information he's going to share with us is going to be really pertinent. If you find yourself stuck in a situation now, or you're in a situation where you're thinking, there is no way I'm ever going to find myself getting through this, or somebody that you love.
Kind of like marriage.
Seeing them get through it. Yeah, beautiful. Then, well, maybe a bad one. And you thought, is there a way? Is there a strategy that I can use? And I think you're going to learn that from our guest today, who is world famous.
None other than Vern Tejas.
So, and Vern has done some amazing things. Welcome, Vern. We really appreciate you being here today.
Vern.
So we kind of start our show with a question. And we ask our audience to try and figure it out during the show. And then at the end of the show, we have our guest answer it. So
this is going to be a really special one dedicated to Vern.
Exactly. So, all right. So which one of these is not true?
Okay, I'm ready.
Vern Tejas has stood on the top of Mount Everest 10 times.
That's a lot. Could that be true?
Vern Tejas got married on top of the highest mountain of Antarctica.
No. Could that be true?
Vern Tejas took a fall in Tibet that was over 600 feet.
No. Nuh-uh. That's a long way. How could somebody even survive that? I don't know if that's true.
I guess we might find out at the end.
You got to stay tuned.
So let's get into talking with Vern. So Vern, a lot of times, people have very humble beginnings. I know that you were raised in Texas. Now, the last time I checked the map, I did not see 20,000
So Vern did not grow up climbing mountains as a youth, is pretty much what we're saying.
So how did you go from Texas to these incredible mountains that people only dream of climbing? And what was the motivation to get out of Texas?
I grew up on the Gulf Coast, which, as you probably can imagine, is flat as a pancake, 50 feet above the sea level in Houston, which is 50 miles away to the actual ocean. So it's very flat. They grow sugarcane there and rice. So that's how flat it is. However, as soon as I was able to, I got involved with the Boy Scouts at a very young age. And we took a field trip, actually 2 weeks in the summertime, to Philmont Boy Scout Ranch in New Mexico.
Oh yeah. Todd's familiar with Philmont.
Yeah, I was supposed to go to Philmont, but then I had a boat run over me 2 weeks before I was supposed to go.
That was kind of a little bit of damper to the plans.
Yeah.
So you went to Philmont, yeah.
So I went to Philmont and climbed my first mountain there when I was 13 years old.
Was it Mount Baldy?
It was Mount Baldy. And for my namesake,
It inspired you even more than anybody would know.
inspired me, and was sort of what helped me find my way in the mountains. I realized at a very young age, 13, that it was something I excelled at. I was the first one of my whole troop to actually make it to the summit.
So what did that feel like to be the first one to make it to the summit?
I was probably the youngest in the group, in the troop there, that was on it. But because I had grown up swimming, I had good lungs, I had good aerobic training. And because of that, it was easy for me to get to the top before anybody else did. Slightly competitive too, after swimming for 7 years at that point,
Sure.
competitive. So that competition kicked in, and even though I'd never climbed a mountain before, I excelled at it and kind of set the hook for the rest of my life.
So that just sounds like that love for the mountains just kind of sprouted in you.
Yes, I think having a wonderful experience for my first one, it made me want to go back for many, many more.
Well, you got to think there are so many swimmers out there too. It's
Yeah.
highly competitive.
Yes.
And, your swimming career can only last really so long competitively. And yet, here you are at 13 years old and you find something that you can do that's very unique, that is something that is just a passion that you can develop that can really set you apart from the masses, you might say. Like in swimming, there's just every school has a team. Not every school has a mountaineer. Am I right? Or a
Yeah, and it's
mountaineering
just
team.
and on top of that, it's just such a cool thing. I mean, to go
It is
mountain
cool.
climbing, it's rugged. It's like down to your base element levels of just being in nature and just like that toughness that it takes to climb a mountain.
But it also seems like there's a passion that you had within you that was already there, and it just came out once you hit the top of the mountain. I mean, you didn't just get that passion once you got there. This is something, like you said, the competitiveness you had before, but somehow the mountain opened up something else for you.
Well, I think the experience was so much of a revelation for me that it changed my life. To do something well without trying, and I realized, hey, maybe I'm a natural at this. And I think because of that, it became my passion.
Mm-hmm.
So all the mountains you've climbed all your life, you never even had to try?
No, they're all very challenging, and that's probably one of the reasons I liked it. I like a challenge, and of course, with my background in swimming, it was always a challenge to try to beat the clock. In this case, it was just trying to conquer oneself in a very challenging environment. So the mountains don't like to be climbed. That's one of the reasons why people don't live on top of them. They're very harsh conditions up there, bad weather, inclement storms coming through, wind, rain, sleet, hail, all those things that the post office hates. That's what you're throwing yourself into. And so that's, for me, it was harder than my normal life. It was more challenging, and that kind of set the hook. Well, I was saying once it got set, I never went back. It's just, I've been climbing ever since.
And I just kind of as a side note, I think from a parenting perspective, how cool it was that you had the opportunities that gave you the ability to find something you had a passion for. I'm not one to say, hey, parents, go enroll your kids in every extracurricular activity you can. But, to expose your kids to things so they can find something they have a passion for, because I'm sure that to you, when you have this drive and this ambition within you to do something you feel like you can excel at, that really changes the person. And I think it helps. Did it help you stay out of trouble?
Well, it definitely requires a lot of energy. So
Sure.
I was hyperactive as a youth, and so it was a great way to blow off steam and to put all that energy into an action. And that was probably one of the things that kept me out of trouble. I certainly had lots of opportunities to get in trouble, and I took many of them. But once I left home and went to Alaska, I was able to focus all of my excess energy on the mountains. And that's one of the reasons I learned learned quickly. Being from Texas to go to Alaska, you have to learn a lot very quickly. So that energy was put to good use.
Sure.
The most parents will load their kids up in the van and grab the soccer ball on the way out and head over to the field for a little game, on Saturday morning.
Which is great, actually. I mean, if that's it, families get together
wonderful.
And go do something.
But the point I'm trying to make is that they know their kids are probably going to come home that day. You're going up to the mountains. How did your parents feel about that?
Well, I think my mom was not happy. The only way I really got to climb was to run away from home. So I ended up on several occasions hitchhiking from Houston all the way up to Colorado just to climb mountains.
Okay, wait. So how old were you when you did that, Vern? That's pretty bold.
Well, yeah, 14.
Oh my gosh. I can't imagine. I feel for your poor mother.
I think your mom's probably more worried about you hitchhiking at 14 than she is about you climbing mountains at 14.
Yeah, I think in the mountains I was probably a lot safer than I was on the
hitchhiking. Side note, do not hitchhike, kids. Do not hitchhike. Do not hitchhike, kids. We do not condone that.
Several
right,
years.
Vern?
Several years. I do condone it. I think it's a great way to get around, but that's another story. I'll let the mothers be counterbalanced to me.
There you go. Okay.
I was able to do that for several years and spend the whole summer in Colorado and learn so much about myself and about the mountains, about altitude. But I still didn't know anything about the Arctic, and that's what I discovered when I moved to Alaska. And when I was 19, I ended up in Alaska, and that was a big. That was college for me. Going to Alaska, it was the university of the mountains.
What an amazing experience at 19, going to a state that's so remote, like the last frontier.
Well, and it's so beautiful up there. Did you find that it made a shift within you internally when you saw those mountains up there, when you were actually in them and climbing them? I mean, obviously, externally, you had to be very strong and skilled to be able to climb the mountains, but what were the internal shifts you have to make to be able to accomplish that?
But I think, first it was just the challenge. Second day in the state of Alaska, I went out to climb one of the little foothills in Denali Park. And things were going great. It got snowy, which was one of my first experiences with snow.
Did you have the right gear, like the coats, the gloves,
No. I was just hitchhiking up from Texas. I had
a little kid from Texas coming up in his cotton gloves and
cowboy hat.
I had, they were pretty reasonable boots. They were more like logger boots than cowboy boots. But I was able to get up high enough, quick enough that I actually got quite wet, quite cold, and quite hypothermic. So
oh no,
that night could have been my last. I was very fortunate. The gentleman I was climbing with, who had picked me up hitchhiking, he realized that I was hypothermic and said, "You need to get in the sleeping bag right now." And I said, "I can't even, use my hands at that point." So he said, "Here's the deal. You keep walking around circles and stomp out camp, and I'll set up the tent and get your bag out." So I just went round and round and round to stay warm. And then as soon as he got the tent up and the bag, basically threw me in there, and I was shivering so much that I was uncontrollable, shivering. And then he started a stove and fed me hot tea with lots and lots of sugar in it. And that saved my life. So I
oh my gosh. Well,
hell of an introduction to Alaska, huh?
No kidding. So no kidding, Vern. I'm really grateful. So that rule of thumb, do not go by yourself. I'm grateful that you didn't go by yourself. How high were you? Like when you're talking about elevation, how high did you go that day?
Oh, we were about 5,500 feet, okay. But it was snowing, and the snow was deep. Yes. At that point, we probably had a couple feet of snow. It was a big storm. I didn't expect that on August the 2nd, as you might imagine in Texas. That's the hottest time of the year. But in Alaska, you can get a storm at 5,000 feet. So that's what happened. We got lots of snow, and cotton acts like a wash rag. I mean, it just you're drenched, and that's not a good way to be. You can't keep your heat when everything's wet.
No. Well, we don't run in cotton, that's for sure.
So Vern goes from that to being the first person to make a successful solo
winter summit of Mount Denali.
Denali, the highest mountain in
North America, 20,310 feet. And because it's
That's
so
amazing.
high, since it's above the Arctic Circle, no, not the Arctic, since it's above the
equator.
Well, no,
and near the Arctic.
Yeah, near the Arctic. Thank you. Since it's near the Arctic, the atmosphere is thinner up there. Is that correct? And so, I mean, it's not necessarily like climbing something. If you're at the equator and climbing a 20,000-foot mountain, you're not dealing with the same atmospheric conditions.
You're exactly right, Julie. There's less atmosphere over the poles, and Denali being very close to the Arctic means that there's very little pressure up there compared to over the equator. Consequently, 20,000 feet there seems more like 23,000 feet if you're at the equator, and certainly a lot colder. And also the weather, I think, is far more inclement in Denali than almost any other place I've ever been.
It's because wow, and you've been a lot of places, so that's quite a big statement there. Yeah, sure.
So
I decided that I was going to learn how to meet the challenge, and then go back and actually climb it to the summit. So that really set the hook. To be spanked so hard on my second day in the state just gave me an immense amount of desire to learn from my mistakes and to get to be the point where I was educated enough that I could actually go back and attempt the summit.
Sure.
So you attempt the summit, but at one point you attempted the summit in the winter, and you went solo, which is somewhat dangerous on Denali because of the crevasses. And if you fall in, you're always relying on others to pull you out. So what prompted you to, first of all, I want to ask, how did you get that skill level from going from, I'm going to die just going out in the backyard, in Alaska, to I'm going to go to the top of one of the most dangerous and coldest mountains in the world?
Okay, and not just that, but how much sun is there in the middle of winter on Denali?
They say there's several different types of different forms of fun, right? So one, you laugh while you're doing it. That's type 1 fun. Type 2 is you laugh afterwards, after it's over and you survive it. But I think it's almost type 3 fun where everybody else laughs about your experience.
Yeah.
For me, the getting that close to death, just seeing the mountain was enough to set the hook. And I spent 5 years before I went back up and tried to actually climb it. And in those 5 years, I apprenticed myself to anybody who knew anything about the mountains. I tagged along with old timers who had been outdoorsmen for all their life and learned from them, tried to copy and imitate what they were doing. I also joined the Mountaineering Club of Alaska. Would go out every weekend with them, and also joined the Alaska Mountain Rescue Group. So I was on rescue missions to bring people back who got lost in the wilderness. Unfortunately, a lot of those ended up being body recoveries, but that also was a good lesson as well, because that made me realize that our actions and our decisions have consequences, and some of them aren't all good. So I got to see it from, I immersed myself in the mountains on multiple levels. And 5 years later, an opportunity came up and I was able to take advantage of it and go climb it.
Wow. So 5 years, that's a long time, because I know people who think I'm going to go train for a year. And fortunately for those people, there are guides like you who can help them. But I mean, you gave it a good 5 years. That's a long time. And something that stands out to me is the humility. I mean, if your ego would have been in charge and been like, oh, I can do this, I climbed to the top of Philmont. I was the first one up. And how successful would you have been if your ego would have been front and center throughout all of this?
Yes, you learn very quickly that you have to be in control of that particular ambition.
Yeah. I think when he went hiking at 5,000 feet with his ego, he learned that lesson real quick.
Yeah.
This young buck from Texas and just getting kicked off the mountain so quick. But that again was my focus, was like never to have that happen again. And in the process, not only climbed the mountain, but then climbed it like 11 more times before I had the audacity to try it in the wintertime. And again, my ego was pretty in check. The two guys who had tried it before had died. So I was well aware of making bad decisions would have bad outcomes. The ego was always in the back seat. For me, when I went to the mountain, I actually said to myself, I'm just going to go until I don't feel comfortable. And if I don't feel comfortable, I'm going to come back down. So that was, people were saying, you're going to do what? And I say, I'm going to try to climb it in the winter. And I never said I was going to climb it. I was going to try to climb it. And so that's a pretty important differentiation between actually, telling people, oh, I'm going to do this, and then realizing like, no, the mountain's going to decide. It's up to me to be smart enough to listen to what the mountain is telling me. And I had multiple instances where it's saying, this is not going your way. But I realized that I had a lot more capacity to hang in there, to suffer more. And did it ever get uncomfortable? Physically, yes, it was uncomfortable every day. But mentally, I was pretty strong in being able to say, it's not over yet. It's still in the cards. It's potentially, if I just keep leaning forward and keep listening, but pushing as much as I felt comfortable with mentally.
Sure. Yeah, one of the things, you obviously made it. One of the things that I love about your story, since you have shared this before, is you had a strained relationship with your father. And when you were on Denali, some things happened within you. And I'm just wondering, in relation to your thoughts, your emotions, and about your dad and your relationship with your dad. And I'm just wondering a little bit about that, but also how did being in nature, could that have happened if you were spending the night in a hotel room? Being in nature, being in Denali, being in the middle of nowhere, dealing with these harsh conditions, how much did that have to do with your feelings, your emotions, and how you approached your relationship with your dad, or how you thought about it?
Well, my father left when I was 12. So right about the time that I discovered mountains when I was 13. It was one of the worst moments of my life to lose him as my father, have that input in my life. However, I decided that I was going to move ahead and move away from him. I actually changed my name because of the pain that it brought me, and went as far away as I could. I left Texas and went to Alaska, and kind of buried that part of my process. I didn't want to deal with it. Didn't want to think about him. I didn't want to address the issue, even though it was vital in retrospect to deal with it. I subsumed it for many years. And then finally, when I'm by myself for days on end, actually I was up there for 29 days, it gave me a lot of time to think about things that I had buried, and the stress of being on edge, I think, kind of brought things to a head, realizing that I might die and I might not ever speak to my father again in the process. But I realized that I had actually inherited a lot of my character from him. And even though I hated him for leaving my mom and leaving my 5 brothers and sisters and myself, I think that it was very important that I tell him that I wanted to thank him for the good things that he gave me, the integrity, the ambition, the competitiveness, the physicality that he represented in my life. Those were wonderful aspects that I inherited from him, and I wanted to thank him for that. So as I was thinking that, I might die tomorrow, might die tonight, who knows, another storm coming in, I could get buried here in my cave and never wake up in the morning, because I'd burrowing in the snow caves throughout that trip. I realized that there's a lot of things there that needed to be dealt with. And so I made a decision before I made it to the summit, on the way up at 16,000 feet. I'd spent a couple of nights there, and I made the decision that if I lived through the challenge of this mountain, that I would get in touch with my father, who I hadn't spoken to for 10 years at that point, and tell him that I loved him and thank him for the good things that he gave me.
And so it sounds like you almost found a level of forgiveness within you, which is a big quality of love. I mean, whether or not, I don't know, I'll let you answer that. Do you think that was true? Just found a level of forgiveness?
Yeah. In order for me to convey the fact that, I had respect for him and appreciated all the good things, that was a form of love in my book that I needed to express. It was hard. I mean, you don't forget the pain. You don't forget not having a father, but you can still remember the good times and be thankful and grateful for what he had given me. So that was, it was a pretty big transition from a hot-headed young buck heading to Alaska who wanted to get as far away from people as possible. That I realized that, I am people, and one of the peoples that I am the most is my father and my mother and my brothers and sisters.
Wow. Right. And because something that we talk about is when you're carrying around unforgiveness, this is something Todd talks about. It's one of the heaviest weights that you can carry. And so, here you are, a mountaineer going up these mountains carrying these, because on Alaska, on Denali, you're carrying some heavy packs, and doing it solo, you are carrying quite a bit of weight. So it's almost like releasing that.
Vern carries more than most, because I know when I've seen him on Denali, looks like he has a house on his back.
Is there Vern in there somewhere? That looks like Vern's stuff, but I don't see Vern.
Well, I think it's Vern's stuff and everybody else's stuff.
Yeah, that's true. But yeah, it's almost like in order to reach that summit, I mean, I'm just sitting here thinking about the analogy of you just have to drop the weight of the unforgiveness, which gave you, I mean, you probably would have reached the summit otherwise anyway, but allowing the weight of those feelings of that anger, or those whatever feelings you were feeling, being able to release them, it's like it's kind of helped you have the ability, more of a lightness to go up to the summit and then on through the rest of your life. I mean, if you would have carried that around with you forever, I love who you are as a person, and I just can't imagine Vern, who's carried, anger and hatred all these years, how different you would be right now.
Julie, I think you hit it on the head right there. The feeling of relief that I felt knowing that I was going to contact him if I lived through it, ordeal, the challenge lightened my load considerably. I mean, we're moving lots and lots of weight, but to not have the psychological burden, the emotional burden of never being able to communicate with my father again was great. I mean, that's one of the things that probably motored me to the top, was just knowing, like, if I get down, I need to talk to this guy. It's really important.
Ah, that just gave me goosebumps, Vern. That's how cool. I love that.
So did you get it all worked out with your father?
Well, you know, he still was himself when I got back down. Unfortunately, and this is crazy, he actually, when I got back, I did try to call him, but he wasn't around. But somewhere he was on an airplane sitting next to somebody, and they got talking. This is a crazy story, but the guy next to him had said, you know, like, hey, did you hear about that guy in Alaska? Oh, I think he was from Alaska. And my father said, oh, my son's in Alaska. And then they got talking. He's a mountaineer. And this guy said, oh, some guy just climbed Denali in the wintertime. And they got talking. He then understood that it was me that climbed it. And he made an effort to try to contact me, which was crazy. But we missed a couple of times. You know, back in those days, there wasn't, you know, they conveniently text each other. You got to be at the phone when they call, and there was landlines. So you weren't always around the phone like we are today. But we did a couple tags and tag backs. And finally, he called when I was home, and we actually talked. And I was able to go down to Texas and visit him with my son and my lady at the time, that I was able to tell him in person that I loved him, and thank him for all the good qualities that he had passed on to me.
I love that.
All right.
We'll have to do another interview. We've got so much we want to talk to you about. I hope you join us again.
I want to know at some point when we talk to him next time, I want to know, one, what he would encourage the younger generation to do today to have that same kind of passion, enthusiasm, and willing to get their hands dirty the way you did to learn and become the best that you can be.
This is your homework, Vern. This is your homework.
Yeah,
Got to think about this.
And then also I want to know when couples, because I know you've guided all over the world, when couples are in the tents and going up these mountains, extreme harsh conditions, how do some of them do well in those environments with each other and support and love one another versus the ones that are ready to tear the other one's head off and throw them over the cliff?
See, Todd and I would do really well in that situation because he's just learned to say, yes, dear. Yes, dear. Yes, dear.
So will you help us out on that one on the next time that we meet and do a podcast with you?
Yay.
Okay. Awesome.
Yay.
All right. So now we got to answer the question.
Okay. So.
All right. So the question was, which of these is not true?
Okay.
The first being that, what was the first one?
Vern has climbed Everest 10 times. Don't answer it yet. We're going to get through all of them.
Don't answer anything yet.
The
second
one
is it true or false? Vern got married on the top of the highest mountain of Antarctica, which I think is Mount Vinson for some reason.
Yeah, Mount Vinson.
And third,
Vern
took a fall, and I don't necessarily mean like a free fall and no rope. I mean, you know, just took a slide down 600 feet.
600 feet?
600 feet.
600 feet.
It's a long slide. It's longer than anything I ever experienced when I was at the playground. So let's go. Okay, and we'll find out which one's false. All right, number one. Have you climbed Mount Everest 10 times?
Woo!
Very good.
The crowd goes wild.
Oh, you have your guitar with you?
He had his good, yeah. Yeah, that's Vern is famous for his guitar playing.
Well, actually, I've
entertained.
seen him on the mountains with violin.
I love it.
You used to
That's
take a violin up, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so that
Back in the day.
So that's number one. Is
And,
only 10 times. You've only been up there 10 times. That's it. Okay. I was gonna say.
Right.
Yeah. That is a good number. I think that's a very good number.
And one of those times is when he climbed the highest elevations of each continent, all 7 continents, and broke the world record in the shortest amount of time. Would that be correct?
Wow.
Oh, 2 occasions. Okay.
Wow.
All right. So, and he holds some other records, but we'll talk about those next time we interview him. The second one
is Vern married.
Vern got married. Well, wait a minute. Maybe the Vern got married part is the tricky part. Could that actually have happened?
I know.
The guy's
Somebody
always
actually
gone.
got.
He's always gone all
That's
the time.
right.
I mean,
Somebody's able to rope him in
Yeah.
when they had a chance.
So it is not convenient.
And actually,
to
I
reach.
think that you would say you roped her in because you say you're just as lucky as.
We haven't answered,
the question yet.
So, Vern, did you get married on the top of the highest mountain of Antarctica?
Woo, good answer. Good answer. Good answer.
And
I
can
know-
you
I
give
know
us a
how true it
sentence
is
or two
because you
about
talked
your
about
wife
that.
that you did marry? Was she a guide or?
My wife was actually working a different kind of career entirely, very foreign to the mountains. However, she loved the mountains at the time, and we were able to climb it together, and we decided to tie the knot, so to speak, on the top.
Oh, I love that. I know. That's awesome. I love the pun.
He works as a guide, and we get to do trips together. The next one we'll be guiding together will be in Bhutan.
Oh, wow. What a life you guys lead. That's amazing. That is so amazing.
I know.
Yeah. I just want to, could I?
We walk around the block together.
Maybe we go up to, we'll go climb the little foothills of Tulsa.
Yes. So, okay. So the last one by default is not true. And that would be, have you fallen 600 feet before?
I have not fallen 600 feet, but I have slid down mountains in a form called glissading. And typically you can go very far, very fast. You have to make sure that you have a clear run out. You don't want rocks or crevasses or cliffs down below.
That does not feel good.
Trees are bad too, but you can get down off a snowfield quite quickly by just laying on the snow and sliding. I like to do it upside down and backwards, head first.
Vern, oh my gosh.
Well, as I mentioned, you have to have a clear run out before you do that, but you can get down super fast doing that, and it's relatively safe as long as you're under control.
Yeah. And you notice when he took the hat off, he had a few dents on the top of his head where he did hit a rock or two.
I've gone over 600 feet glissading.
How far have you gone glissading?
Probably about 1,000 feet.
1,000 feet.
Wow.
Okay, so how long is your furthest fall that you've ever taken?
160 feet. And that was
16 stories.
Wow.
That was on the Cassine route on Denali, very steep. And I was leading at the time. And my stance, I was on crampons and I was setting an ice screw. I had one piece in about halfway up the pitch. My buddy Marty down below was belaying me, and we were trying to climb quickly, so I only put one piece of protection in. He had a piece in. These are what we call ice screws. They're just a piece of metal that screws into the ice. But where I was trying to place another piece of protection so I could clip to it and then bring Marty up to me. In the process of trying to put that in, my foot stance broke out from underneath me. It was very hard, brittle ice. It shattered. I fell all the way down to where the middle piece of protection was, and then went all the way down. I was hanging upside down when that middle piece of protection actually caught the rope and left me hanging upside down looking at my buddy. And I said, Marty, what are you doing? He says, I'm putting the protection back in. Thought you were finished up there. So there was only one piece of steel, one piece of metal holding us onto the mountain.
Gosh.
Had it broken, both of us would not be around today. Actually, Marty died on K2, but I would not be here telling the story today.
Yeah. How old were you, or how long ago was that?
It all seems decades ago, but that was when I was young and impulsive. But that would have been in the 80s.
Wow.
So live and learn.
There are old climbers and bold climbers, but not old and bold climbers. I know that's the saying.
We have to learn from our mistakes, and
That's right.
one of them was to choose your partners well. Make sure they're not in such a hurry that they take out your backup protection.
Sure.
But I don't climb ice that frequently these days, and that might be one of the reasons, because I realize how fragile the ice can be.
All right. So,
thank you again
Vern,
so much for
you.
joining us. Oh, we love talking to you always. It's such a joy.
And we are going to have you back, because we want to learn about romance on the mountains and all that. So until the next time, thank you.
Mwah, mwah. Sayonara. We love you, Vern. Have a great afternoon. All right.
See ya.
Bye.
All right.